On the internal heaven, a state of habitual interior union that subsists beneath and sustains all external apostolic activity. And in a remarkable retrospective vision composed in 1916, Dehon traced his social mission in full. And we have here a very striking quotation about this. It's in French. I will read, je repasse dans ma mémoire toute ma participation à l'action sociale chrétienne. C'était une vocation, une mission providentielle. En 1872, je fonde le patronage, j'y ajoute successivement le cercle, l'association des patrons chrétiens, une réunion d'études sociales. Je provoque de beaux congrès. À Notre-Dame de Liesse en 1875, à Saint-Quentin en 1876, à Soissons en 1878 et de 1897 à 99, des conférences à Rome. Dans tout cet apostolat, je ne voyais que le relèvement des petits et des humbles selon l'esprit de l'Évangile. We now move to the third point of the implied authorial presence in this, the note quotidienne. And it's about the search for the divine legitimation of his own foundation. As Léon approached his 80th birthday, the note quotidienne increasingly take on the character of the systematic effort to establish the divine origin of the SAG work through a strategy of retrospective reframing. And we see this through the different dates there. There's a kind of retrospective reframing in the note quotidienne by Father Dehon. So in 1878, the vow of victimhood, mystical favors, 1878, visions of Sir Ignace, Dehon's vow and the subsequent providential trials, loss of his health, sacrifice of Sir Marie de Jésus, read as accepting the offering. In the 1890s, the institutional crisis, the suppressions, internal opposition, the congregation, and canonical difficulties are narrated as purifications, signs that the congregation belongs to God, not to human approval. There are losses, persecutions, expropriations. But all these are read through the lens of the book of Job. Between 1914 and 1923, Father Dehon also recounts the papal and Holy Souls confirmation, the audiences with Benedict XV and Pius XI, presented not as a personal triumph, but apostolic mandates confirming the charism of the SAG. And finally, in 1923, the approval of constitutions. And there are few dates there, the ecclesiastical approvals. 1877, 1884, 1888, 1906, 1923, with Pius XI. And this is considered as the narrative climax. Charism passes definitely from personal to institutional form. The congregation's identity is now inscribed in universal law. We now move to the fourth point. The communication maybe can help us in this. Number 4, please. So the number 4 is on history as the history of salvation. Dehon is not a neutral observer, but a spiritual witness of history. Number 4, please. Okay. And the Great Wall is read through the providential hermeneutic and theological purpose. The divine punishment, the Great War is interpreted not as a geopolitical accident, but as punishment for Europe for legislating God out of public life. And we also find the space for grace. The war is a real-life Calvary, where the blood of the fallen will blossom into spiritual renewal and national restoration. The divine justice, the conflict is seen as a debt to divine justice, requiring reparation and a return to the heart of Christ for true peace. Also, lessons in history, the personal exile and institutional ruins are read as lessons inscribed by God, guiding the congregation towards His true mission. We move now to point 5. Thank you. Thus, the personal evolution and aging, the process of idealization and preparation for death. We identify in Note Quotidienne 35-36 that the year 1913 to 1915, an elder statesman entering terminal awareness, omniscient witness of world events. And in the Note Quotidienne 37-39, from 1915 to 1916, we see a spiritual witness interpreting national punishment and the Great War. And in Note Quotidienne 44-45, that's from 1921 to 1925, we see a mystical participant preparing for eschatological departure and final union. There is a kind of internal focalization. There's a shift from external observation to internal mystical impressions and relationships with the heavenly friends. And also, we notice in this implied authorial presence the physical atonement. The physical decline is recorded as a literal continuation of his reparative mission and spiritual vocation. There is also this spiritual humility. The implied author's presence adopts the persona of the worst sinners in need of mercy, reflecting the depths of his union with God. The implied authorial presence also identified to the network of relationship, the earthly and the heavenly friends. The earthly friends, this living relationship with bishops and collaborators, are modulated carefully, grounded in recording tensions while maintaining institutional charity. Benedict XV is called all friendship and support for the Sacred Heart altar in St. Peter's. Pius XI definitive approval of the constitutions in 1923. Rome is called Seconde Patrie. That's on the 55 years of annual visit. And we have the names of some earthly friends. Here, Léon Armel, Toniolo, Marquise de la Tour du Pin. And for the heavenly friends, Dehon constructs a network of celestial friends, saints and departed collaborators presented as an invisible community sustaining the congregation. Don Bosco, Louis Lato, Pius X, all these people are called clouds of witnesses. Now we move to the third part of our presentation, is the construction of the mock reader as a faithful disciple. And here we have 5 key points. The first is the reader mediator, Dehon as a reader and the results of his reading. Secondly, the narrative power from tragedy to redemption. And thirdly, meaning of suffering as setbacks as divine favor. Fourth, we have the apostolic fruitfulness, active and passive attitude. And finally, we notice this transition of authority from charismatic founder to legal constitutions. Léon performs the role of reader mediator, a figure who reads the spiritual tradition on behalf of the reader. He forms the reader into a practitioner of Lectio Divina without requiring him to undertake the entire intellectual labor independently. And you have there the list on some of his readings. About the mystical union, we quoted there Rubruck, Toller, John of the Cross, supports union as normal Christian destiny. And about victimhood, we have Thérèse of Lisieux, Elisabeth de la Trinité, Lorenzo Scupoli, self-offering to merciful love. And about the Holy Spirit, we have Barthélemy Froger, de l'habitation du Saint-Esprit, read and reread with passion. About the spiritual life, we have Charles Sauvé's series, Elevations, Passions, Dieu intime. I must confess that Charles Sauvé is very present in Father Dehon's notes quotidiennes And we notice it even, I say here from 1915, but it's already from 1913 up to 1917. And about the apostolic life, Louis Lallemand, Doctrine Spirituelle, Framework for Active, Passive Apostolic Fruitfulness. The narrative power from tragedy to redemption. Léon uses journalistic realism to transform historical setback into redemptive stories, documenting wartime deprivation to establish solidarity with the mock reader, occupation of Saint-Quentin, exile as providential pilgrimage following Christ into the desert, the loss of the original SAG house, le berceau de la congrégation, suffering as birthpangs of the congregation, Benedict XV's personal encouragement, papal mandate transform private devotion into universal apostolate. The great bread and rationing alongside prayer, experiential solidarity with the mock reader. Suffering is never minimized, but never given the last interpretive word. Every apparent failure is a preparation for a greater fruitfulness. The meaning of suffering are setbacks as divine favor. Dehon teaches the mock reader to view suffering through a sacramental lens, to read every setback as a potential disclosure of divine favor rather than straightforward evidence of the divine absence of displeasure. He models the fiat as the ultimate response to obstacles, turning the burden of fundraising, the Roman refusal of endorsements, and the dishonesty on serious bursars into occasions for a daily sacrifice for the reign of the Sacred Heart. The sacramental interpretation of suffering is grounded also in Dehon's own interior life. Suffering does not disturb the implied authors or the mock reader deep peace, but deepens it, modeling a spiritual disposition intended for SAG's readers across generations. The apostolic fruitfulness, the active and passive attitude. This is based after Louis Lallemand in Doctrine Spirituelle, the integration of action and contemplation. About the active apostolate, we see these external works of the young: governance, correspondence, writing, formation of the SAG religions, the social engagement, reparation, a structural and relational reconstruction. Witness living before the community what he proposes spiritually in the note Quotidiennes. Are looking at the passive contemplation, la messe perpétuelle du ciel, adoration as participation in the eternal liturgy, a practice of the perpetual adoration, an offering for the church and the world, uniting with the heart of Christ. The Trinitarian dialogue, creating Father, Word, on spirit in each oraison. The fruit of this, we have this inner stillness that radiates without effort through apostolic depth. Effectiveness is directly proportional to one's union with God, where activity is the overflow of contemplation. Now let us look at the transition of authority from founder to constitutions. We see this charismatic authority, the personal magnetism of the founder, the direct spiritual transmission, the oral and epistolary guidance, dependent on the young's personal presence. On the other hand, the institutional authority, constitutions as permanent law, the textual transmission of the charism, independent of any single personality, foundation for global expansion. Brazil, Java, and so on. So the transition is not experienced as loss, but as fulfillment, the successful textualization of the charismatic impulse. The Notes Quotidiennes' final pages model this transition with theological calm. Authority passes from person to text, from charisma to constitution. In conclusion, so the mock readers as the faithful disciple, the ideal mock reader in the Notes Quotidiennes 35 to 45 is finally the SCJ who shares the providentialist vision of history, accept secularism as a spiritual aggression requiring a response. It is the SCG who recognizes the divine legitimacy of the SCG work. It's the SCG who aspires to mystical union as the normal goal of Christian life. It's finally the Dehonian who sees in every institutional failure a prefiguration of resurrection. It's the SCG who identifies with the spiritual heritage of a cloud of witnesses. We now move to the last part of our presentation before the conclusion is the meaning for today's reader. And here we have 4 headlines: the modern challenges confronting self-secularism. Secondly, relevance of concepts of spiritual life, the concept like union, victimhood, and reparation today. Thirdly, the openness, reading the signs of the time, the Second Vatican Council, Gaudium et Spes. And finally, the SCG identity today between fidelity and creative renewal. Modern challenges confronting self-secularism. When we look at the Dehon's context, of course, this could make some discussion about this. The hard assertive laichism of the French Third Revolution, the expulsion of religious communities, nationalization of the church property that was clearly established during Father Dehon's time. We can see a kind of clear enemy, the rhetorical energy called persecution. Of course, we still have persecution today. And in today's context, we see a kind of, especially in Europe, a kind of self-secularism. Religion privatized but tolerate. More difficult to engage precisely because the enemy is invisible. And this poses a deeper long-term challenges to our identity as Dehonian, to our mission and our vocation. Now we look at some concepts and their relevance for today. The concept of union, victimhood, reparation. The mystical union speaks directly to interior life, to interior hunger, widespread interest in contemplative practice, that we know that. But this needs to be uncovered. You have to uncover the deeper meaning that applies to everyone today. And this is maybe the challenge for all of us today as Dehonian, to allow this concept of mystical union to speak to everybody. The concept of victimhood requires more explanation. This must be read as active self-giving love. The concept can also resonate with care, ethics, kenotic Christology, disability theology. So to translate it in our context, showing how it works in real life situations, avoiding romanticized suffering, integrating vulnerability as a strength. Again, the concept of reparation, the active commitment to repairing broken relationships between persons, communities, humanity, and creation, speaks powerfully to the ecological crisis. It needs to go beyond a focus on making up for wrongdoing and include the wider structural, social, and environmental issues. The third point of being today's reader is this openness. The Second Vatican Council, reading the signs of the times. Perhaps the most important implied author's posture in the Note Quotidienne 35 to 45 is the capacity to read the signs of the times through the grammar of the gospel. Léon encourages his readers through both his words and his example to let go of the attachments to the past and to step into new reality with joy. Now, about our identity as Dehonian today, between fidelity and creative renewal. We have this generative tension transmitted by the Note Quotidienne for contemporary SAG readers. fidelity to the charism. We just look at the concept of mystical union. This is the core of the spirituality, the heart of Christ as organizing center. We all agree with that. The reparation as foundational category. Also providentialism as reading of history. And the not quotidian are normative spiritual portrait. Now, how to move to this creative renewal? On our commission suggests to look to the AI ethics and human dignity. And just recently, the Holy Father issued Magnificat Humanitas, the dignity of the human person, the age of artificial intelligence. So this can really speak to us as Dehonian. We can also look at the ecological conversion, the post-colonial reading of mission, new norms of religious community, interfaith and intercultural dialogue. So we have come now to the conclusion of our presentation. In the conclusion is towards an hermeneutics of the not quotidienne. In the conclusion, our commission says that the not quotidienne 35 to 45 transcend the personal diary. They are an instrument of charismatic formation destined for the future of the SAJ. And Boswell narratology illuminates the tripartite relationship, a real author, implied author, and mock reader in the Dehonians, not quotidienne 35 to 45. The implied author constructs a coherent discipline identity through narrative, theological, and relational strategies. We notice this evolution of victimhood from justice to merciful love, marked as a significant spiritual shift in Father Léon's life. The synthesis of interior life and social action remains a living and challenging legacy for all of us Dehonian of the 21st century. Dehon's Note Quotidienne 35 to 45 is a major attempt to connect the painful events of the early 20th century with the lasting hope offered by the heart of Christ. The author's main achievement is creating an image of the ideal Dehonian that's rich and open enough to guide the community's discernment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Michel Simutemgo, for the beautiful presentation about the presence of Dehon as an ideal founder and the construction of the faithful disciples in Note Quotidienne 35 to 45, and narratological, historical, and theological analysis of Léon Dehon's Note Quotidienne. And we also express our gratitude and appreciation to the European Commission for this really hard work to study the 12 notebooks of Father Dehon's daily notes. It's around more than 600 pages. So thank you very much for this hard work to help us to understand the meaning beyond the text that could be seen as a simple daily notes, but we have discovered that it's more, way more than just a daily notes. It's through the dynamics between the implied author and the mock reader, we discovered that there is the journey of faith and the formation of the reader to understand this journey of faith in the daily life, and how we are, as the today's reader, can follow this path of creative fidelity, of understanding Father Dehon's message, but also to live it in our times. Thank you very much once again to Father Michel and to the European Commission. Now we are almost exactly 9:45. Thank you for the concise presentation of Father Michel. You still have 1 minute actually. So now we can go for a break, and we will return to this auditorium before 10:15, before 15 past, a quarter past 10, to listen to the response from the African Commission. So it's time for a break. Thank you. Okay, let's take our seats. For those who are still outside, I'm inviting all the participants who are still outside to join us here in the auditorium. As I mentioned before the break, we will continue with the response from the African Commission to the presentation of the European Commission. And already present with me here, Father Guy Bertrand Wabo, who will present on behalf of the African Commission their response. Please, Father.
Je vais parler en français quand il a fini de faire le maquillage, comme dans un bon studio. Merci. Nous avons lu avec beaucoup de plaisir et grand intérêt le travail de la Commission théologique déhonienne et européenne. Mais malgré nous, sommes appelés à faire à présent l'avocat du diable. Donc je m'en vais là vous présenter quelques observations, questions et réflexions qu'a suscité en nous ce travail. D'abord, ce que nous avons appelé le point sur l'appréciation du texte. Il y a ce qui nous a marqué dans ce travail déjà, c'est ce cadre méthodologique bien défini avec les 4 niveaux de lecture le cadre méthodologique donc bien défini avec les 4 niveaux de lecture bien identifiés, l'auteur explicite qui est le Père Dehon, qui narre les événements, rapporte les faits, exprime ses sentiments. L'auteur implicite, celui qui relie ces faits sous l'angle théologique de la providence et les voit comme suivant une ligne tracée d'avance par Dieu. Le lecteur implicite, destinataire construit par le texte, souvent identifié comme un prêtre pieux, nous y reviendrons, et l'appropriation ou l'actualisation, le lecteur d'aujourd'hui, dont nous, lecteurs contemporains. Alors, nous avons aussi identifié, je suis peut-être allé loin, oui, 4 grandes thématiques théologiques dans ce travail. Le providentialisme, à savoir que tout événement, maladie, guerre, incendie, mort, s'inscrit dans un plan divin dont ces thématiques sont rattachées à la figure du Père Dehon. La spiritualité victimale, autrement dit que la souffrance comme purification et accomplissement du vœu, lecture des signes des temps, notamment la Première Guerre mondiale, vue comme punition divine pour une Europe insolente, la sanctification du profane, un concept aussi important dans ce travail, à savoir qu'aucune dimension de la vie n'échappe à l'ordre providentiel. Et puis, les influences du Père Dehon ou sur le Père Dehon, l'école française de spiritualité, par exemple, les saints et d'autres maîtres spirituels. À présent, la partie critique, est-ce que ça change? Comment faire? Ça n'a pas. Je ne sais pas s'il faut continuer. Ça doit être le 4e slide. Donc pendant qu'on essaie là, parce que ça n'a pas changé, je vais continuer. Donc quelques questions et réflexions. Père Charles peut peut-être nous aider, merci. D'abord, le point sur la providence et l'histoire. Nous estimons qu'il y a un risque de spiritualiser excessivement les événements au détriment de leur dimension historique et politique. Cette remarque, ce n'est pas seulement à la Commission, mais c'est pour notre réflexion. Par exemple, à la page 8, il est dit que l'auteur rapporte que Dehon interprète la perte de sa santé, ses difficultés financières, l'incendie du collège Saint-Jean, ses épreuves morales et sa perte d'honneur comme une réponse de la providence divine à son vœu de victimisation. Toujours à propos de la providence et l'histoire, il nous a semblé comme une incohérence relevée quand il est dit donc, pourquoi les épreuves de la congrégation sont considérées comme une purification et celles de la nation comme une punition. Autre question qu'on se pose à ce niveau, Dehon adopte-t-il ici une logique de justification, de justice rétributive? Le texte qui suit, c'est un exemple. C'est le prochain slide déjà, si on peut changer. Donc, ces maladies, je cite le texte, vomissements de sang, souffrance, dus à ce qu'il décrit comme un froid sibérien, ne sont pas présentés comme des obstacles à la vie spirituelle, mais comme sa confirmation corporelle. Et à la page 9 du document que nous avons lu, l'auteur souligne que Dehon interprète la Première Guerre mondiale comme une punition pour l'Europe et une dette envers la justice divine, tout en voyant dans cette même guerre un lieu paradoxal de présence de Dieu et de renouveau spirituel. Prochain slide. Sur le lecteur implicite, est-il pertinent de le réduire à un prêtre pieux? Plusieurs passages suggèrent un lecteur plus large, croyant, citoyen, contemporain ou non de Dehon. Dans la conclusion partielle de Michel tout à l'heure, il a décliné un certain nombre de figures de SCJ qui seraient rattachées à ce lecteur implicite. C'est un SCJ qui est. Mais une fois de plus, est-ce qu'un non-SCJ ne serait pas aussi bénéficiaire de ce document, de cet enseignement, de cette expérience du Père Dehon? Prochain slide. Sur la mission et la colonisation, le lien entre évangélisation et mission civilisatrice est à interroger. En fait, avec les études postcoloniales, ou les interprétations postcoloniales qui sont dans tous les domaines de la science, l'association de ces deux concepts, évangélisation et mission civilisatrice ou colonisation, ne sont jamais en faveur de l'évangélisation. C'est toujours un peu pour ternir quelque part cette mission évangélisatrice. Donc, peut-on s'inspirer de ce modèle pour la mission? Et là, je cite le texte qui dit que l'Europe de la fin du 19e siècle et de la première moitié du 20e siècle est enthousiasmée par la notion de la mission civilisatrice qui allie évangélisation et colonisation. Les confrères ont souligné l'implantation des missions de la congrégation en Afrique et en Asie. On voudrait savoir l'interprétation de l'auteur implicite et de l'auteur explicite sur la mission dans les notes quotidiennes. Prochain slide. Sur l'intentionnalité d'écriture des notes quotidiennes. Dehon écrit-il pour son progrès spirituel personnel ou déjà pour la postérité? C'est vrai qu'on dira que tout écrit est toujours destiné finalement à un public, mais nous lisons les notes comme si nous surprenons, n'est-ce pas, Dehon, dans sa réflexion. Et donc, mettre en avant l'intentionnalité, déjà dans l'écriture, pose un problème, il nous semble. Il y a cette tension. Donc, s'il est vrai que dans les notes quotidiennes, le père Dehon, dès l'entame, est habité par un horizon pédagogique, une intentionnalité qui nourrit des objectifs au centre desquels se situe son œuvre. Comment rendre compte de l'horizon mystique de ses écrits, si l'on prend au sérieux ces mots de Thérèse d'Avila qui affirme que l'âme doit concevoir les choses comme s'il n'y avait qu'elle et Dieu au monde. Pour terminer en beauté et sur une note positive, en conclusion, nous retenons une fois de plus qu'avec la Commission théologique dehonienne européenne, les notes quotidiennes du père Dehon ne sont pas qu'un témoignage autobiographique, c'est-à-dire un document qui rapporte des faits sur sa vie, mais une norme spirituelle proposée au fils de Dehon avec une portée à la fois personnelle, pédagogique et institutionnelle. Merci.
Un grand merci au Père Guy Bertrand Wabo et également à la Commission théologique de l'Afrique pour la réponse à la présentation de la Commission théologique de l'Europe pour prendre la position de l'avocat du diable. Merci beaucoup. Merci pour la question qui nous provoque, qui nous font réfléchir sur comment bien comprendre le texte de notre quotidienne, mais aussi comment lire le texte à partir de notre temps d'aujourd'hui, pour notre temps d'aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup. And now I turn to English. So after this, we go directly to the group works, to the group discussion. So please, I ask help Father Ricardo Ronaldo to present the list of the group. You can stay. Yeah, okay. The list of the group is in the already. Okay. Already in the WhatsApp group, you can see, but we will also show the list to help. There's another document, secret one. Okay, so this is the list of the working groups. We have 6 groups for the group discussions, and with the moderators. So the first group is the Portuguese language, room 1 theology building, with Father Marcelo Batalioto as the moderator. And you can see the members of the group, and you can see if your name is there. The second group, the Portuguese language B, room 2 theology building, with Father Nelber Rodriguez as the moderator. You can also see if your name is there as the member of this group. The third group, group 3, French language, room 3 theology building. The moderator is Father Joseph Fameret, and you can see if your name is there, the French language. Group 4, English language A, room 4 theology building. The moderator is Father Christophe, I don't know how to pronounce the name, Christophe Napora. And you can see if your name is there. Group 5, English language B, room 5 philosophy building. The moderator is Father Josimar Bajo. You can check your name there. And the last but not least group is the Spanish language, room 6 philosophy building, with Father Renato Lima as the moderator. So those are the groups and the moderators. And the task of the group, other than discussing the question that I will be presenting after this, but also you need to appoint someone between you to be the secretary, to be the one who will present the report, the conclusion of the discussion. So the question for the discussion, to guide our discussion, is this. From what we have heard, what are significant and important aspects for our understanding of Father Dehon in his text today? So from the presentation of Father Michel and also the response from Father Guy Bertrand, so what are the significant and important aspects for you, for each of us, for our understanding of Father Dehon in his text today? So hopefully it's clear as question, and also for the list of the group. And I hope the moderator knows where the room is for the discussion. Thank you, and we can go to each group for the discussion. Thank you. Yeah. So the secretary, you have to appoint one person to be secretary to. Sorry, the time. So we will. Thank you. We will return here at 11:15. So 11:15 for the plenary assembly. So we have around 40 to 45 minutes for the discussion.